What if Revelation weren't a book of fear, but a secret survival manual? John, exiled on Patmos, recorded visions that span centuries and expose power and corruption. These prophecies speak of signs that touch the heavens and shake the earth, far beyond mere metaphors. Between horsemen, seals, and trumpets, there's a roadmap of judgment and also hope. Today we'll decode that code before the clock of the end times moves forward. Wars, famine, plagues, and disasters already shape the headlines you read every day. What if that isn't random, but the precise replay of the prophecies John saw? Can you tell when the mark of the beast, 666, stops being a symbol and becomes a system? When the economy tightens and freedom shrinks, judgment becomes tangible and urgent. The question is, could you recognize those signs without falling into panic or deception? This video is for those who want practical clarity, not theories that confuse. I'll show you how to discern salvation from seduction and truth from control. We'll examine the beast, the false prophet, and the fall of Babylon without sensationalism. You'll understand how daily choices function as a quiet form of judgment, and why neutrality before power is always a form of submission. Here's my value promise, direct and measurable. In a few minutes you'll have a map to read seals, trumpets, and bowls in the real world. A checklist to identify signs, protect your faith, and anchor yourself in renewal. No jargon. From Armageddon to salvation, the path will be clear and actionable. You'll leave with simple criteria to act with courage, calm, and discernment. If the world seems close to destruction, it's because history also points to renewal. Stay with me to the end and prove to yourself that the prophecies can be understood. You'll see why fear paralyzes but understanding frees and prepares. After seeing what John saw, you'll never look at your life the same way again. Shall we begin now, or would you rather wait for the signs to choose for you? Few realize it, but Revelation was not born from a mind disturbed by fear, but from the courage of John, exiled on Patmos, who received visions that would transcend centuries. Imagine being isolated on an island, far from everything and everyone, and yet hearing echoes from heaven, revealing secrets that would change history. It is in this setting that he wrote about prophecies, signs, and the end times, a mystery that still intrigues the powerful and the humble alike. John wasn't just talking about destruction or judgment, but showing that each revelation also carried a spark of hope. It was as if, beside every catastrophe, there came a reminder that heaven remained sovereign, even when the earth trembled. This balance between fear and promise makes Revelation as relevant as today's headlines. After all, who hasn't wondered if all we live through isn't just a prelude to something greater? The visions he described are like windows opening to parallel realities, horsemen crossing horizons, trumpets echoing judgments, and seals guarding humanity's destiny. John becomes more than a prophet. He is a messenger decoding heavenly codes. It's curious to think that, in a world full of technology, we still seek to understand symbols written nearly 2,000 years ago. And it's no coincidence that so many try to apply these texts to modern events. Some see in them today's wars, economic collapses, epidemics, and even the spread of corruption across global systems. For those who read carefully, Revelation is not just about the past or a distant future. It's like a mirror reflecting our age of uncertainty. The most fascinating thing is that Revelation was never meant to cause panic, but to awaken discernment. John opens the book making it clear these are divine revelations, and whoever listens has the chance to realign their life. From there, the reader realizes that before the wars and the beast, come cosmic signs: stars falling, the sun darkening, and the moon turning to blood. And that leads us straight to the next point. John describes something that stirs the imagination: stars falling from the sky, the sun darkening like a burned-out lamp, and the moon turning to blood. This image is not only terrifying but deeply symbolic. For many, it speaks of natural catastrophes. For others, it is a spiritual sign of the end times. Either way, it's impossible to read without feeling a chill at such magnitude. Modern science has shown us that meteor showers, eclipses, and volcanic eruptions can paint the skies red, exactly like the prophecies. But when John speaks of it, he isn't just narrating cosmic phenomena. He suggests creation itself reacts to human corruption and divine judgment. It's as if the universe were a stage and each catastrophe a curtain rising for the next act. It's fascinating to see how people react to such signs. Some are paralyzed with fear, others filled with curiosity, and many try to calculate and predict the future. But perhaps the true purpose is to awaken awareness. After all, if even the heavens are giving signs, how can we ignore the urgency of rethinking our choices on earth? There is also a spiritual dimension in this narrative. The darkening of the sun can symbolize the loss of light, of hope, and even of faith in dark times. The moon turned to blood reminds us that judgment is not just collective but also personal. Think about how often our inner crises feel like a total eclipse. In such moments, seeking refuge in God can mean the difference between being lost in chaos or renewed in hope. And the most intriguing part is that this cosmic darkness is not the end but just the prelude. When the skies announce catastrophes, the stage is set for even more striking figures. The horsemen who ride forth bringing conquest, war, famine, and death. When John speaks of the horsemen, he isn't just describing frightening visions. He is painting a portrait of humanity in crisis. The first, riding a white horse, represents conquest, the insatiable desire to dominate and expand. How often have we seen leaders or political systems act like this, disguising ambition behind words of peace? It is the kind of power that seems noble on the outside but hides dangerous intentions within. The second horseman appears on a red horse, bringing war. He symbolizes conflicts that devastate nations and families. Just look at today's headlines. Endless conflicts, modern weapons, lives destroyed in the name of ideologies. John shows that war is not just political, it is also a reflection of spiritual corruption. When the human heart surrenders to violence, destruction becomes inevitable. The third horseman, riding a black horse, brings famine. He carries scales in his hand, measuring grain, showing scarcity and inflated prices. Sound familiar? In many parts of the world, while some waste, others fight for a piece of bread. This horseman reminds us that economic injustice is also a form of judgment, a warning that the earth suffers when man exploits it without balance. Then comes the fourth horseman on a pale, sickly horse, bringing death and the grave. This is the harshest image: plagues, diseases, and mass destruction. But notice that John doesn't describe it as fantasy, but as a reality we've seen throughout history, from pandemics that wiped out continents to recent global crises. It is as if this horseman has always been riding, reminding us of the fragility of life. These four horsemen are not just distant symbols, they are living metaphors we can see in the world today. Conquest, war, famine, and death continue to ride in our era, and their hoofbeats echo in our streets and on global news. But according to John, this is only the beginning. After the horsemen comes something even more disturbing: the enigma of the mark of the beast, the infamous 666. Few symbols spark as much debate as the mark of the beast, the infamous 666. John describes it as a sign of submission to evil powers, placed on the hand or forehead, distinguishing those who belong to the corrupt system. Many see it as just a number, but in truth, it is a symbol of control. After all, isn't it strange how, throughout history, governments and empires have sought to dominate not just people's bodies but also their minds? This mark raises deep questions about economy and faith. The text suggests no one could buy or sell without it, making us think of financial systems, digital currencies, and increasing surveillance. Imagine living in a society where your access to food or work depends on obeying unjust rules. That idea doesn't sound so distant when we look at how technology and power are intertwined today. Spiritually, the mark of the beast is much more than a chip or code. It symbolizes choices. Whoever surrenders to corruption, deception, and the seduction of the false prophet ends up bearing this invisible seal. It's like someone who constantly chooses dishonest shortcuts to get rich. In God's eyes, that's a mark louder than any tattoo on skin. The striking thing is that Revelation doesn't portray this mark as inevitable, but as a decision. For just as there is the mark of the beast, there is also the seal of the Spirit in those who seek salvation. A practical example: when someone chooses integrity in business, faithfulness in family, and justice in daily choices, they are rejecting the mark of corruption and aligning with heaven, even while living on a corrupt earth. But John doesn't stop there. After presenting the symbol of 666, he describes visions even more intense: divine judgments unfolding as seals are broken one by one, unleashing wars, plagues, and earthquakes shaking the planet. When John describes the opening of the seven seals, he shows that each one is like a divine decree being released upon humanity. The first seal already brings the rider of conquest, reminding us that the events are interconnected. With each seal broken, a new layer of judgment unfolds, as if heaven were revealing, step by step, the destiny of the earth. It is a narrative that captivates because it shows that nothing happens by chance. The seals speak not only of mysterious symbols but of tangible realities. Wars breaking out across regions, plagues devastating entire cities, and earthquakes shaking nations. If you stop to think, how many of these things have we already witnessed in our times? Epidemics, seismic disasters, endless conflicts, all echo what John saw in his visions. But Revelation also shows that the seals are not merely tragedies but signs. It is as if they were heavenly alarms sounding, "Prepare, something greater is coming." Those who pay attention to such signs can position themselves better in the midst of crises. It's like an investor who studies market trends. Those who ignore them lose everything, but those who read with wisdom are ready for the impact. The sixth seal, for example, speaks of earthquakes so intense that kings and rulers hide in caves. This image shows that before divine judgment, no status or wealth can protect anyone. It is a reminder that power, riches, and influence are fragile before the weight of eternity. Haven't we often seen men who seemed untouchable fall because of a simple mistake or unexpected crisis? And still, the seventh seal remains, the one that introduces something even more terrifying: the trumpets. John describes a silence in heaven, as if even the angels were holding their breath before the next judgment. In this tension, the narrative leaps into even more intense events, where fire, catastrophe, and global destruction take center stage. When the seventh seal is opened, silence in heaven is broken by the sound of trumpets. Each blast announces even harsher catastrophes, revealing the weight of divine judgment. John describes fire mixed with blood falling upon the earth, burning crops and vegetation. It is as though the planet itself were crying out against corruption and sin. The impact is not only physical but also spiritual, reminding mankind that it has no control over everything. The trumpets strike the seas and rivers, turning waters into blood and killing fish. Imagine the helplessness of watching essential resources for survival become useless. This judgment strikes at everyday life: food, economy, health. It's easy to relate it to today's environmental and health crises, which already give us glimpses of the chaos John envisioned. The trumpet blasts also bring darkness over a third of the sun, moon, and stars. This shows that it is not just natural disasters, but spiritual signs pointing to an age of despair. How many today live as if under inner darkness, lost amid war, famine, and death? Revelation makes visible, through symbols, what we already partially experience. A chilling detail is when John describes beings rising from the abyss to torment humanity. It is not only the physical world that suffers, but also the spiritual. Judgment invades every sphere of human existence, showing that the apocalyptic war is fought not only with weapons but also within the soul. It is a reminder of the importance of faith and hope even in the face of chaos. And after such frightening visions, John presents another figure that deepens the drama: the beast rising from the sea, the embodiment of oppressive political power dominating nations. If the trumpets display the global effects of catastrophe, the beast represents the tyranny that thrives in such chaos. John describes the beast rising from the sea as a monstrous figure with many heads and horns, symbolizing political power and tyrannical governments. It is not merely a creature, it is the image of systems that oppress, exploit, and control. Think of empires that grew on blood, war, and corruption. The beast is the eternal portrait of such structures, which may look invincible but, in God's eyes, are temporary. This beast doesn't act alone. It receives authority and even worship from nations. This shows how unjust regimes often grow not only by force but by society's silent consent. Like when nations accept tyrants in exchange for promises of prosperity. John warns that yielding to such power is, in a sense, carrying the mark of the beast within. What stands out is how the beast mixes politics and spirituality. It not only rules but demands devotion, almost like worship. It reminds us of modern leaders idolized as saviors, even while spreading destruction and lies. Revelation exposes the danger, the idolatry of human power that replaces trust in God. Prophetically, many believe the beast represents not only ancient Rome but also future global systems that will control economy, communication, and even faith. In our age of globalization and technology, this seems more plausible than ever. Look at how corporations and governments control data, finances, and daily life. But the drama doesn't stop here. John introduces another dangerous figure: the false prophet, the beast from the earth. If the first represents political power, the second symbolizes religious manipulation, deceiving multitudes with false miracles. Revelation is clear: tyranny always walks hand in hand with lies. If the sea beast represents political power, the false prophet is the religious face of tyranny. John describes him as having the appearance of a lamb but speaking like a dragon. Outwardly gentle, inwardly deceiving. This leader uses false miracles to manipulate crowds into worshiping the beast. History has shown countless times how religion can be twisted into a tool of control. The false prophet's danger lies in how he touches faith. He doesn't threaten with weapons but with words that seduce, rituals that impress, and twisted truths. Like those who bend scripture for personal gain, using God's name to legitimize injustice. Revelation shows that his greatest weapon is not the sword but lies disguised as spirituality. Even more alarming, the false prophet cooperates with the sea beast, creating an alliance between religion and politics. Such marriages of power always end in disaster. Think of regimes that relied on religious leaders for support, or preachers who exploited faith for wealth. John makes it clear, when faith loses its purity, the result is mass manipulation. But this isn't just about history. The warning is timeless. The false prophet represents every deception that replaces truth. He appears in speeches promising easy prosperity, gurus selling miracle formulas, or influencers promoting distorted values as freedom. The challenge is discerning between what comes from the Spirit and what is illusion. And right after exposing the false prophet, John describes the pouring out of the bowls of God's wrath, final plagues that devastate not just humanity but creation itself. Diseases, darkness, and droughts reveal the end-time conflict escalating to its peak. When John speaks of the bowls of God's wrath, he describes 7 final plagues poured out upon the earth, the climax of divine judgment. Painful sores, seas turned to blood, rivers contaminated. Each bowl strikes vital areas of human survival. It reveals that no unjust system lasts forever. These plagues are not just distant tales. Look at pandemics that shut down nations or environmental crises drying rivers and destroying harvests. Revelation shows such events are not mere accidents but spiritual reminders that creation itself cries for justice. When corruption dominates, destruction is inevitable. What is striking is how many, even under judgment, refuse to repent. John says they blaspheme God instead of seeking forgiveness. Crises reveal the heart. Some turn to faith, others harden. Like someone who, instead of learning from loss, sinks into bitterness. Darkness also covers the beast's kingdom, showing that judgment falls not just on people but on corrupt powers themselves. Revelation spares no one, from the simplest to the most powerful, all reap what they sow. Divine justice is complete, touching every sphere of life. And the pouring of the bowls prepares the stage for another climactic event, the fall of Great Babylon, the ultimate symbol of corruption and idolatry. If the bowls expose fragility, Babylon's fall shows the final collapse of unjust systems. John presents Great Babylon as the portrait of corruption, idolatry, and abusive wealth. It is not just an ancient city, but a symbol of systems that defy God, exploiting and seducing with luxury. Her fall is described dramatically. Kings and merchants weep as her riches collapse in a single day. What seemed indestructible crumbles. Babylon's fall is a timeless warning. Haven't we seen mighty empires collapse, stock markets crash, corporations shut overnight? The message is clear. Anything built on corruption and idolatry eventually falls. Babylon is the eternal reminder of the fragility of human structures without God. What stands out is how people react. They don't mourn justice but the loss of their privileges. Merchants lament ships with no goods, kings grieve their vanished wealth. Like when corruption is exposed and those who benefited are left empty-handed. Spiritually, Babylon represents materialism and modern idolatry. She is the voice promising happiness through status and consumption. Her fall reminds us that trusting such things is like building on sand. One storm and all collapses. Revelation calls us to reflect where our trust truly lies. But the story doesn't stop there. After Babylon's fall, John takes us to an even greater confrontation. Armageddon, the final battle between good and evil. The vision of Armageddon is the climax of the clash between light and darkness. John shows the kings of the earth, gathered by the beast and the false prophet, to wage war against God. It is evil's last desperate stand. Imagine every corrupt system, every unjust power, every dark force united in rebellion. The stage could not be more dramatic. Armageddon is not just a physical battlefield but a symbol of the spiritual struggle that has always existed. It reflects wars we see and those we don't, between faith and unbelief, justice and corruption, hope and despair. Looking at today's conflicts, famine and wars, it's easy to see echoes of this prophecy. What is fascinating is that despite the grandeur of the battle, victory comes not by human effort but divine intervention. John makes it clear, heaven triumphs. Jesus is the victorious warrior, defeating the beast and its allies with the power of his word. The end times are not decided by armies but by God's sovereign judgment. Armageddon also warns us not to underestimate evil. Though defeated, it rises with fury in the end, trying to destroy as much as possible. Like a losing team attacking desperately before the final whistle. The message is clear: we must remain vigilant, even knowing victory is already certain. And after this epic confrontation, John leads us to the ultimate ending, the final judgment where every life is brought before God's throne, and a new heaven and new earth are revealed. John describes the final judgment as a grand tribunal, with the dead and the living judged by their deeds. Books are opened and every detail is revealed. Kings, rich and poor, stand side by side, showing divine justice is perfectly impartial. It is the climax of Revelation, evil finally confronted and destroyed. But judgment is not just condemnation, it is renewal. John says evil is cast into the lake of fire, symbolizing its ultimate destruction. The cycle of sin ends, making way for something new. This vision should not only be read with fear but with hope. Who hasn't longed for a world without war, hunger, or injustice? The promise of a new heaven and new earth is breathtaking. It is not a superficial renovation but a total recreation. The old system of tears and pain gives way to eternal peace and salvation. God does not merely destroy, He builds something infinitely better. Like tearing down ruins to build an immortal palace. This hope changes daily life. When someone understands there is an eternal destiny of justice and renewal, it shapes how they live. Forgiving becomes easier, compassion more natural, and investing in eternal values wiser than clinging to materialism. The end times are not the end of the story, but the beginning of perfection. And so Revelation ends not in fear but in promise. After seals, trumpets, bowls, horsemen, beasts, and Armageddon, what remains is a choice. Cling to a collapsing world or embrace the hope of the new heaven and earth. A decision every heart must make. After going through the scariest prophecies of Revelation, it's impossible to see the world the same way. Each seal, trumpet, and bowl is not just an old story but a reminder that we live in serious times, full of signs we cannot ignore. The great question is, will you keep living as if nothing is happening, or will you choose to see beyond the surface? And if these signs already echo around us, wars, famine, catastrophes, corruption, isn't it time to rethink your choices? Revelation was not written to cause fear, but to awaken courage, faith, and hope. What would happen if you began today to align your life with eternal values instead of trusting collapsing systems like Babylon? Perhaps the real question is, what mark do your choices bear? The beasts, symbolizing submission to lies, or God's seal, symbolizing salvation and eternal life? The choice cannot be avoided. Now let me provoke you, which prophecy struck you the most? Which feels closest to our reality today? Share your thoughts in the comments, because the discussion about the end times is not theoretical, it is deeply practical. And if this content gave you clarity, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. That way you won't miss the revelations that can prepare you for what is to come. The journey through Revelation has only just begun.